Johnson and Melody Headley. So, of course, the DA will come to you, and then after we will take questions. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Erica. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Thank you for coming. So we'll have two announcements today, and then I'll be happy to take your questions. First of all, I just want to start off by indicating that we had our first town hall meeting that was part of our regular series. Every other month we're going to have a town hall meeting in a different part of the county. The first one took place in Fraser. It was a success. There were dozens of residents and elected officials who attended. Based on surveys that we took afterwards, over 92% expressed interest in attending another such event in the future, and then asked about their main concerns. Number one, of course, was violent crime, but it was followed closely by racial disparities in the criminal justice system. And of course, I'm here to tell you that our office is working very hard to reduce both of those things. The next town hall will be in the Germantown City Hall on June 27th. Okay, an update on the Tyre Nichols case. First of all, I wanted to mention that the autopsy of Tyre Nichols is almost complete and will be available soon. We expect that it will confirm that Mr. Nichols died as a result of the injuries sustained in the beating. Also, we have determined that no criminal charges will be brought against Officer Hemphill. If you recall, Officer Hemphill was the MPD officer who was part of the first encounter with Mr. Nichols, the first traffic stop, and was not present at the second encounter, the actual beating that led to his death. We took the time to do an extremely thorough investigation of this part of the case. The trial team reviewed hours. You should come closer. You should all be closer. Yeah. They reviewed hours and hours of body-worn camera footage and interviewed witnesses a number of times, including Mr. Hemphill a number of times. Mr. Hemphill was very cooperative throughout the investigation. Throughout that entire time, we consulted with the family of Tyre Nichols and their attorneys and kept them informed. I've been informing them every step of the way. In fact, I spoke to the family and Ben Crump, their attorney, as recently as last night about this development. They are supportive of our decision. By no means do we endorse the conduct of Officer Hemphill at that first traffic stop. I note that the Memphis Police Department did, in fact, take administrative action against Mr. Hemphill. So, again, we're not endorsing what happened, but we do not believe that criminal charges are appropriate. I note that Mr. Hemphill was not present for the initial traffic stop, nor was he present when the other officers removed Mr. Nichols forcibly from his car and put him on the ground. He arrived at that time. He had to make his decisions based on what he knew or what he thought was happening and following the lead and in support of the other officers. He acted on limited information in a matter of seconds at the direction and support of the other officers. He did not pursue Mr. Nichols, was not present at the second incident where the actual beating took place that led to Mr. Nichols' death. I'll also note that from the get-go, he has been fully cooperative with the TBI, with the FBI, and with our office. He and his attorney have met with us several times, and we do expect that Mr. Hemphill will testify at trial in this case. I have a statement that the family of Tyre Nichols and their attorney, I do, have asked me to read. Just bear with me for a second while I find that. Here we go. This is a statement on behalf of the Tyre Nichols family by Ben Crump, their attorney. We understand that this individual has been fully cooperating with the investigation and has promised to provide substantial cooperation going forward. In light of this, we are supportive of no charges for this individual. It is our deepest hope and expectation that justice will be served fully and that all who had a role to play in this senseless tragedy will be held accountable. That's it for that update, and we are happy to take your questions.
So was Officer Hemphill the officer that was heard in the body cam footage saying, "I hope that they stomp his ass"?
Yes, and that's why I say in no way do we endorse what Mr. Hemphill did, his attitude or conduct at that initial stop or in the moments immediately afterwards. But we have to be focused only on the time frame of his actual interaction with Mr. Nichols. The statement you referred to was made afterwards and had no direct causal relationship to any injuries that Mr. Nichols sustained. Again, we're not endorse Mr. Hemphill or his attitude, but what we have to decide is what can we prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he did that is in violation of a criminal statute. That was our only inquiry, and we've made our decision on that basis.
He didn't make a plea bargain or anything like that, though, did he, with the DA's office?
We're not talking about a plea bargain. We are talking about him fully cooperating and agreeing to testify at trial. And we believe that no criminal charges are appropriate.
If he hadn't have cooperated, do you think that you would have not filed charges still?
That is a difficult question, and fortunately, I don't have to make that decision.
So he was the one who fired the taser as Tyre Nichols was running away, and that, are you saying that didn't have any bearing on Tyre Nichols' eventual death?
Yeah. So that is an interesting question, and it's a good question, Lucas. When we first viewed the video, it appeared that he was firing the taser at Mr. Nichols as Mr. Nichols fled towards the neighborhood. After extensive viewing and reviewing of the video and understanding how tasers work and the amount of time it takes to charge up a taser from the time that you first start to use it, we realized that at the moment that Mr. Hemphill was trying to taser Mr. Nichols was not fleeing towards the neighborhood, but was in fact heading towards an open car door of a police cruiser. And that had to bear weight on our evaluation of his decision.
And not that he was actually necessarily fleeing to the open car door,
Right.
but that is if you take the officer's perspective. If you watch the body cam, very intensely, very slowly, you'll see Hemphill's perspective at the time the taser's actually deployed, and there is the police cruiser door open, and that's the direction that Mr. Nichols is traveling.
And when we're doing these evaluations, as Mr. Hagerman correctly pointed out, we have to view it from the perspective of what the defendant was seeing and perceiving at the time. And certainly, that's the kind of argument that defense counsel would make in any trial. And again, we have to evaluate from this perspective of what do we think we have a reasonable chance of convincing a jury unanimously, beyond a reasonable doubt, regarding actual violation of criminal statutes.
So I just want to understand, Mr. Hagerman, you're not saying it's not the opposite contention that
We think Tyre is just trying to get away. All right. We think he's trying to get away from violence and from those threats that you heard on the video. We have to examine Hemphill's conduct and put ourselves in a different position. We got to put ourselves in a position of what Hemphill would have known and what Hemphill saw at the time that the taser was deployed. I'm not saying Tyre was trying to get in the police car. I'm not. What he's just trying to get away. He's trying to get away from the violence that is being visited upon him.
Okay. There were a whole host of other officers who showed up at the scene. Certainly the lieutenant who lied to Tyre's mother. There are the former Memphis fire employees. Are you investigating them? And do we anticipate charges coming from them?
Right. So we are still actively investigating the fire department employees, and that's under active investigation right now, so we can't really comment on that. There's still more information that needs to come back before we can make a decision. We are not contemplating criminal charges against any of the other police department officers who showed up after the beating that led to Tyre Nichols' death.
Do you have any update of when the trial might take place?
Anything guess?
We don't. We're still in that. You're fine, boss. We're still in the process of discovery and everything with the defense attorneys. There's also the matter that, of course, is under court review about the documents the city turned over and their release to everybody. So we're still in the initial stages of the attorneys reviewing everything. One of the defendants just got a brand new attorney too, so things are really in the initial stages.
Which defendant is that?
Justin Smith, now has Martin Zumach.
And do you have any sort of timeline now that we can expect?
Well, we have a court date in June. We also have this issue with regard to the documents, like I said, that have been filed with the court that we're trying to get resolved. The court's trying to get that resolved this month. So that's sort of, where we're at.
We don't expect a trial in 2023.
And when you speak of those, the end of the month, do you mean the video, the full?
So the
body cam
city,
video?
okay, so what's the issue? There's an issue before the court right now, and I think you're aware because the Media Coalition has been allowed to intervene and file their own pleadings in it. The city was in possession of numerous documents, some having to do with their administrative investigations and things with regard to this case. Rather than releasing those documents, they gave them to the court for the court and for the parties to review so that defense counsels could make objections if they wanted to as to things that shouldn't legally be released. And so the court is waiting for defense counsels to make their objections to those things, and then the court's going to hear a motion with regard to those things and hopefully be releasing those documents and those videos as we go.
I wanted to go back to Hemphill firing the taser for a second. You said the autopsy is almost complete, and I'm just curious if the autopsy mentions that was factored into his death as, something that was a, compounding factor. Does that change if you guys are willing to press charges?
We don't anticipate the autopsy will show that.
Number one, I don't think it's going to show that.
Do we know when that autopsy is expected to be completed?
Very soon.
Shortly.
Yeah.
Shortly. I know that we're speaking with the family. The medical examiner's office gave us the courtesy of the family, the courtesy of speaking with them privately about it, and we're doing that in the morning. Tomorrow morning. So I would expect the autopsy to be released after that. I don't know if it'll be tomorrow, or the next day, or medical examiner's office.
When can we expect a trial again?
Well, we don't know for sure for all the reasons Mr. Hagerman said, but certainly not this year.
Yeah, I would doubt there'd be a trial this year.
I understand you're probably going to want to wait for the autopsy to come out. Part of the contention was that Mr. Nichols may have been under some sort of intoxicant. Is that what the autopsy shows?
I think the autopsy will speak for itself, when it comes out, and the medical examiner's office has given us the courtesy of seeing it so we can speak with the family privately about it. Beyond that, I don't think we should probably say much about it other than it's going to confirm that he died as a result of the beating that we all watched.
How do you think with this news that y'all releasing, the public will respond to hearing Hemphill no charges?
Well, I think the fact that the family of Tyre Nichols and civil rights attorney Ben Crump have publicly stated that they agree with the decision, I think that will go a long way towards allaying any concerns about the decision not to bring charges against Mr. Hemphill.
I think, justice doesn't mean a witch hunt. Justice doesn't mean charge every single person that, arrived on the scene or anything like that. We've got to be careful, and justice means we've got to do what's right. And we've got to focus, and my boss has us focusing on these defendants that we saw in the video, that we have charged, and that we're going to work hard for however long it takes.
Okay, any other questions on this topic or anything else? Yes.
I had a question on something separate.
Yes, you're allowed.
So earlier on in your, since you took over office, it seemed like a lot of the officer shootings, pretty much all of them fatal, non-fatal, injured, not injured, TBI was getting called in on. And as of late, I feel like that's less so. Is there a shift in your guys' policy on when you're calling in TBI to investigate officer shootings?
No conscious shift. The most recent shooting at the Hueys was from an off-duty officer, which is a different analysis. You know, in one or two instances where it was, you know, undisputed that the other persons were firing first, you know, it didn't seem like it was necessary. But no real shift, just circumstantial.
Speaking of TBI, will you be calling TBI to investigate the death of Antonio Golden, who died in jail this week?
We're still considering that. I have still been trying to get as much information as I can about the circumstances of Mr. Golden's death. In fact, I spoke to Sheriff Bonner as recently as this morning about it. You know, what we know was that he had complained about breathing issues and had been asked to go to the jail medical unit. The situation seemed to deteriorate in the jail medical unit, and he was sent off to Methodist Hospital, and where he eventually died. Don't have a medical examiner final determination as to cause of death yet. You know, Sheriff Bonner has pledged to keep our office in, you know, constant contact and update as soon as we find out. Once I found out a little bit more, I'll make my decision about whether a TBI should be called in. It's not our practice to call TBI in every time there is a jail death or a death in custody. Sometimes it clearly isn't appropriate. Like, for example, if it is obvious that it was a jail suicide, right? And there's no suspicion that it was anything other than a jail suicide. In this particular case, there is no indication of any use of force on the part of any correctional officers. This is a medical event, but I will, you know, still consider it as we get more information about the actual cause of death.
I guess separately, again,
Mhm.
I recently took a trip out to Nashville to tour their behavioral care center.
Yes.
And I talked to Mayor Harris, and he said that he was kind of getting a delegation from Shelby County to
Yes.
go over and tour. Did you have any thoughts on that?
Yes. Yes. Great article about that,
Thank
by the
you.
way. Great comments from Mayor Harris. I thought they were spot on. I am so pleased that Mayor Harris is interested in that. I think that it is something that is long overdue. It appears to be, you know, achieving really great outcomes over in Davidson County, and there's no reason why we can't do something like that here in Memphis. So I'm glad we're going to take the tour. A representative of our office will be joining that tour, and you know, I am firmly in support of what Mayor Harris is talking about, and look forward to working with him on that.
Any other questions?
All right,
Thank
thank
you.
you all very much.